Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to import the FBX data that we've just exported from Vicon Shogun Post into Motionbuilder and do a little bit of scene cleanup and organization before we start the retargeting process and on from that. I'll try and keep these videos short and sweet in Motionbuilder now for each stage of the workflow so it doesn't get too confusing. I'm not going to do a massive overview of the user interface in this video either, because I'll probably try to cover lots of menus that we aren't going to use during this task for the module. So what I'll do is I'll cover the menus as we use them, yeah? But quick overview, Motionbuilder has a main 3D viewport that's configurable and then lots of other options menus around the outside for covering options and properties of objects, and a timeline with playback controls. And one of the ones we'll use quite a bit here is our take selector. Now Motionbuilder is a massively important software tool used in motion capture processing because of one simple fact, other than how powerful it is the fact that it can open multiple takes. So if we've shot 100 motion capture takes, we can load them all in at once and see how our characters work across all of those takes, which speeds up a lot of workflow and is been used in the mocap community for years and will continue to do so if Autodesk keeps it alive. So let's have a look now and see about importing data. So when you first open Motionbuilder, you should get an interaction kind of window. If you need to find it again, you can go to Settings, Interaction Mode, and I have this set up as Maya for Motionbuilder only. Yeah, you need to set it the same as this if you're going to be able to use the same keyboard shortcuts and the same options menus with mouse clicks that I'm using. So to make sure you go to Interaction Mode, Maya for Motionbuilder only. If you chose a different one when it first started up, then go there now and change the interaction mode to Maya for Motionbuilder only. Okay, so when we exported our mocap, cleaned up mocap data as FBX, we did it in two stages. We exported the ROMs first, and then we exported the fight scenes next. We're going to import our data in a similar way. First of all, we're going to import our ROM takes, and then we will import our fight takes. And it's important that we do it in that method to keep the data in the right structure. So the first thing we're going to do, let's import our ROM takes. So to do this, we go up to our File, Motion File Import. We don't do Open, we don't do Merge, because they are different operations. When we are dealing with just motion capture files and motion skeletons, we use the Motion File Import dialog. So that's in File, Motion File Import. Now let's navigate to our database folder where we exported the ROM takes. So for me, that's up a couple of levels. CT6 mocap fight sequence, mocap data, into the folder, and then we'll see Andy ROM 001 and Lindel ROM 001. Select both of those files and click Open. Now in the next dialog that pops up, this is very important. We go to the top left-hand corner and create in separate hierarchies. What this will do is it'll import Andy's ROM as one skeleton and Lindel's ROM as another skeleton and keep those data structures separated, which is very, very important. So you can see here, got that set up, creating separate hierarchies, click Import. Now if we have a look at our scene file, we can see that two skeletons have come in. And the important window I said earlier on is this little drop down with our takes. Yeah. So we have take one, which has no data in it whatsoever. It's a default take that's set up in Motionbuilder. If we go to Andy ROM, we scrub the timeline and we'll see there's a skeleton move in. So if we kind of select one of those bones, we can see here Andy ROM 001, this namespace, which I'll come back to later. And you'll see that only that skeleton is running. There's only animation data for Andy in Andy's ROM take. Now if we switch to Lindel, we'll see now that Lindel's skeleton is moving, which means the data has come in correctly. If the same skeleton is moving in your takes, then there's been an error on import, and you need to refer back to the other videos that I've done about exporting data using correct pipelines and making sure that everything is working. If everything is okay so far, we should have two separate skeletons in here, one with the namespace LindleRom01 and one with the namespace Andy. Let me try and select the arm there for that. AndyRom001. We can also see that now in the navigator. In the bottom left hand corner, we can see the navigator, and there's a little scene plus arrow that we need to expand. I'm just going to move the menu up so you can see it. And now we'll see that lots of objects, 3D objects, a little teapot symbol, have been loaded in. Yeah. All of Lyndall's markers, her skeleton, all the unlabeled markers, etc. So we know that our data has come in. And now the next thing we'll need to do is to just save our scene. One of Motionbuilder's little foibles is the fact that the undos only have certain contexts. So there's many operations that do not have an undo context. So it's very, very important that we save our scene regularly with different versions that we can go back to at any point if anything goes wrong. So I'm just going to save this now. Save as. And I've made, as you see here in CT6 mocap, just put it as details. I've made a Motionbuilder folder. You could do that in here in the mocap fight sequence. I've done it up one level, Motionbuilder folder, and I'm going to save mine as Mobu Setup 01. Mine exists already from previous tests, so I've just saved over the top of that. So if anything goes wrong, at least I know I can go back to that version where I had my ROMs imported. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to load in our fight takes that we exported, but we're going to merge them in a special way. So the next thing we'll do, we go back to File, Motion File, Import, but now instead of the database session folder, we go up and find our working files folder and load in. You should have the 3 fight takes in there. I'm going to select all of them and click Open. Now, important in here, we're going to merge that in selected hierarchies, in all models, merge in all models, ignore model type. We're going to create unmatched, import scaling, and import degrees of freedom. And over here, you'll see it'll create new takes for all of those with the timelines as they're coming in here. So keep the options the same as this, merge in all models, import from file for take start end, and then click import. Okay, so now if everything has come in correctly, we should have some new takes. So we've got Andy ROM, Lyndall ROM from our last imports, and now we have fight section 1004. We can see our props moving. Fight section 2002. Again, everything is moving correctly. And fight section 3A05. Again, everything is moving as it should. Yeah? Okay, so by doubling this check, we can see that all of our FBX data is imported correctly. If you see anything different from this when you do it, it means there's been a problem exporting. This is why I was really careful about making a video about how to export your FBX using the separate pipelines for the ROM takes and the fight takes. If for some reason you import your data and you have any errors, you'll need to go back and redo those workflow stages. This might be back as far as resolving the labeling setups and solving setups in all of your takes and saving them again, and then exporting all the FBX using the correct pipelines. But again, if you followed everything correctly to this point, your data should import and look like this. So one of the next things we're going to do is we're going to just tidy up our scene a little bit. Now, I talked about namespaces here, and again, if we look at our scene browser, we can see that there is a lot of data in there, and it's going to be quite complex to try and select what we need in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some groups to organize our workflow. So we could select everything manually in the viewport, which is going to get quite confusing. But because we have namespaces, we can use those to select selections of objects that we want. And we can find that here. If we go to Edit, Select by Namespace, and we go into this Options menu, excuse me, just had to clear my throat. Now we can see the different namespaces that exist within our scene. Andy, Lyndall, and the swords. But we also have lots of unlabeled markers. So let's select those, making sure Select Branch is checked as well. Click OK, and then go to Edit, Delete. We don't need any of those unlabeled markers in our scene. They are just leftovers from the cleanup process, so we've got rid of those to tidy up our scene. Now let's save this again now. File, Save As, and I'm going to save that as Setup 02. So now we know we've got all of our mocap data imported correctly, and we don't have any unwanted markers in our scene to confuse us. And we can see now, we can see things much more clearly. But if we go to, say, Andy ROM take, we still have the swords in here and Lyndall's skeleton, but they don't have any animation data on. The models exist across all scenes, but the animation data only exists in the specific takes. So what we'll do now is we'll set up some groups to be able to hide things we don't need within different takes and be able to manage our scene a little bit more effectively. So let's start, we're in Andy ROM, let's start with Andy ROM and make a group for his mocap data. So again, we can select this using namespace. So go to Edit, Select by Namespace, select Andy ROM 001 and make sure we have branches selected. Click OK. So now you'll see that Andy and all of his markers have been selected. So we can now create a group to manage this. So if you go down into the right-hand corner of the interface, and you'll see a little area called Resources, and we want to go across to the Groups tab. And now with that selected, we're going to click the Create button, creates a new group. We'll double-click that, and we can rename that Andy Mocap. So now, within that group, if I double click again to deselect that in the viewport, I can use these little checkboxes, show, I can hide everything. If I uncheck pick, it means I can't select anything. And if I uncheck the translation rotation scale, it means I can't move anything or do anything like that by accident. But let's leave those checked for now. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go through and create a group for each of our namespaces that we have remaining in our scene. So make sure we double click in the viewport to deselect everything. Go Edit, Select by Namespace, select Lyndall ROM 001 with Select Branch checked. Click OK. And now we can go down here and create a new group. Double click and rename that to Lyndall Mocap. Double click to deselect in the viewport. Go back to Edit. And we'll do sword 6 markers. And now we can create a new group for that. Oops. Sword 6M for 6 markers. What did I do there? Let's go back a number of steps. Oh, I did something wrong there. This is why it's really careful to get things right. So let's start again. I got back to the point where I'd created groups for Lyndall and Andy. So now let's go back again and edit, select by namespace, sword 6M, select branch, okay, create. Now double click there. and I've renamed that group. Double click to deselect everything. Actually, what I'll show you now is if I select that group, and now I go into Edit, Select by Namespace, and do the 7 marker one, click OK, you'll see they've all stayed selected. And if I create a new group, it makes a subgroup, which is not what you want. So I'll undo that, deselect everything, and now go back to Select by Namespace, Sword 7M, and now it's created a separate group for that I can rename, and we have our group selected as set up. So now we can hide things to make the view look tidier when we're preparing everything in the later videos. So let's just go, let's change our take back to, oh, we got Andy ROM, but we know in here the only thing with data in that is Andy mocap. So let's hide all the others. And now we can see that Andy mocap has the data moving in the correct layer. So if I select any of that, you can see it's Andy ROM 001, and he is the only thing moving in that scene. Yep. When we go to Lyndall's ROM take, you can hide the other things to see them clearly. Select a node and make sure Lyndall ROM is the right namespace in there. Now again, namespaces, if you use Maya, you'll be familiar with those. What namespaces allow us to do is to have objects, nodes, whatever you want to call them in the scene that have the same name. So if you look here, if I unhide Andy mocap, you'll see if I select, if I zoom in, I can hit F actually to frame that. So if I select there, Lyndall ROM 001, right up leg. And if I select that one, Andy ROM 00, right up leg. If we didn't have these namespaces in the scene, we'd have two objects with the same name, which is not allowable. But we'd want to keep that from a rigging standpoint or a technical standpoint, and namespaces allow us to do that. The namespace before allows us to have different versions, but with the same node name under different ownership. Yeah. So I can orbit around with my left mouse button. I can zoom in and out with the right mouse button, and the middle mouse pans just like in Maya. And if I want to frame an object or a selection of objects, I can hit F. I can add objects to selection with Shift. Control deselects them. Or I can double click in the viewport to deselect everything. Yeah. And I can move my time slider to check. I can press the loop button. Standard kind of playback controls that we have in most 3D software, and the ability to navigate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unhide everything, and I'm just going to save that scene now. I'm not going to keep you to a strict naming convention here. I'm going to save and change things as I go to my own working convention, and that's up to you, but I would definitely save versions as we go. So save a version after you've brought the ROMs in, and then save a new version after you've brought in the fight takes and set up your groups to kind of tidy up and manage your scene. I'm going to leave that there for this video. And in the next one, we will start going into the individual ROM takes and start covering some bigger topics like characterization and how we'll start retargeting our data.